It's also funny that, when you sit in these meeting rooms and you start feeling tired, maybe you think that you need a coffee and so forth. That's actually what you don't need. What you need is fresh air. There are studies that show that if you reach, I think it's between 1,500, 2,000 ppms of CO2, that's very easily, you probably have that in the room that you're sitting right now, by the way. The cognitive impact that is happening in your brain is equivalent of having 1 pint of beer.
Today, my guest is Joakim. Joakim is from a company called Airthings. Joakim, welcome to my podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Please introduce yourself, introduce the company, and tell us what you do.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me, Pete. So my name is Joakim Lindh. I work at a company called Airthings. I am currently head of strategic growth, meaning that I work strategically out towards the market, trying to figure out the next steps, where to be, where to sort of increase our exposure and all that good stuff. So I've been in Airthings for approximately 6 years now. I'm moving through a couple of different roles within the company, sort of growing with the company, right?
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today, and thanks for the introduction. And yeah, actually, we've discussed it before the podcast. I was fascinated by your journey within the company, right? You went through all the field, the product, customer service, and sales. Talk me through this. How did you start with the company? What has been changing? What did you find maybe in those different positions within the company as well?
Absolutely. So my background is very technical. I'm an electronic engineer from the start. I was working at a company called Texas Instruments, where Airthings at the time, a few years back, was one of our customers, right?
Mm.
And I was helping customers to integrate wireless technology within their products so that they could be connected to phones and so forth. And so at the time, Airthings was very heavily into consumer products, with the main market being US, and had started to understand that their indoor air quality monitors that was used in residential homes and different areas also had a very suitable area in commercial buildings, right? Within office environments, schools, and so forth. In 2019, the company was actually founded in 2008, but in 2019, Airthings created a subsection that was later called Airthings for Business, specifically targeting commercial real estate and schools and so forth. So at the time, they had a lead within this new sort of startup in a scale up, right? And they needed somebody to come in with some technical knowledge, technical expertise. So I actually went into Airthings in 2019 and as a field applications manager. Started off with creating a team that helped the sales force to truly be out there at customers, help them to install indoor air quality monitors, to integrate them to if they had their own platforms or if they wanted to explore and also evaluate connecting it straight to the building BMS or building management system to introduce demand-based systems and so forth. So very technical, very out there, being hands-on with the products. We soon discovered that since the heritage of our commercial products was from the consumer space, meant that these products were actually very simple to use. It was very effortless to install these devices, right? You peel off a piece of tape, you stick it to the wall. The integration was also very easy. So as we moved on, we quickly realized that this technical support needed was a bit overemphasized, right? Mm-hmm. And we saw what we really needed to focus on when we had this growing amount of customers is actually customer success. Actually following up with customers, the installation and the onboarding was so easy. So the big real focus we had to have was to follow up with these massive amounts of customers, partners that were growing their portfolio, increasing, buying a lot of sensors, and they needed to understand how to really grow together with us, right? Mm-hmm. So then I moved into and created a customer success team instead. So I became slightly bit more sales focused, if you will, to really follow up with these partners, customers. It became too little technical at a point, actually, which is I think this is 2 years back, where I actually decided there was an opportunity to take over the product team instead. So I started off very technical, then went very less technical, and then I ended up in the midpoint actually running the product team and sort of defining the future roadmap for the products for the commercial buildings, and from there now stepped into a more strategic position. So that's kind of the journey, easily explained. There's obviously deeper areas we can dig into.
Yeah, fascinating story, and I can actually see this. And you went the technical product, but then really focus on the customer, because that actually helps you later, right, in developing the product. You've had first-hand feedback, discussions, conversations with your clients. And now you probably have discussions with your prospects. You'll know what actually convinced them to give it a go and change the way they monitor or even start monitoring the air quality. Super cool story about your journey. Joakim, tell us a little bit more about the Airthings, because it is fascinating. I know that from doing a little bit of a research and the conversation we had a few days ago. But talk me through this, what you actually bring for the businesses, right? From the very beginning, why they should really be interested in what you do, and what change do you bring to companies?
Yeah. Airthings was founded on one belief, and it's to empower people to breathe better. That's like the key core. That's in our DNA, right? When Airthings was founded, it was about radon detection. So our founders, they figured out a way to create a device that could actually measure radon and present it on a screen, both short-term averages and long-term averages. This was actually a revolutionizing technology, because typically in the past before that, you have small passive black boxes that you just throw out, that you have to send into a laboratory and you have to get results back and so forth. So Airthings was founded on that idea of being able to present accurate, sort of semi-live information to people to actually take action very fast. And from that radon detection, that radon kind of area, Airthings quickly went in, also as we were approaching the pandemic, actually, started to invest in other ways of measuring the air quality, right? There's other things in the air. There are pollution in terms of particles. There's CO2 that we breathe out. We have temperature, humidity that impacts us. We have VOCs, volatile organic compounds. So you have all these things in the air indoors, and we spend a lot of time indoors, right? We spend over 90% of our time indoors, where we know that the pollution today can actually be 5 times as worse, because we're building tight buildings and we have all these furniture and paints and all this stuff that actually off gas a lot of chemicals. So there was this whole idea of, we're spending so much time indoors where the air is bad. We need to start monitoring it. That's the first step, because you can do a lot of things, but unless you actually monitor what the problem is, you can't really know what problem you're trying to solve, right? So Airthings came up with these great small products. Show you here, it looks like this, and this actually measures a bunch of things, and it allowed us to very easily provide a solution where users could get instant feedback on what's going on with the air, what's going on in my home, right? And eventually later, what's going on in my building. So that's the core thing that we're doing at Airthings, is to empower people to breathe better. And we've had huge success, of course, in the US, where our biggest market is, also cross-pollinating into Canada, where radon actually is a very big theme, to all over Europe, and even across some of the Eastern Asian parts as well. So we've touched base in actually most parts of the world, but we do see a bigger growth area in certain places, of course.
Fascinating. Yeah. Empowering people to breathe better. And, I absolutely love this. And, yet again, where we spoke before, when we discussed a little bit about the air quality, I instantly thought outside in the street, and you realign me and say, Pete, everyone thinks this, but when you look at your routines and lifestyle, right, and probably spend majority of the day, 20 hours at least a day indoors, right? And what you're focusing on, obviously, is buildings, so schools, offices, right? Because, employers ask people to spend 8 to 10 hours within the office, and you can improve the quality of the air there, and equally improve how people feel and how productive they are. And radon is one of your big ones, the USP. There's something that you do beyond maybe some other devices. Yeah. Super, super cool. Now, could you also touch on dangers of the radon, if that's your main focus? And also, when you have that information that the levels are higher than they should be, what those companies can do with that information to change it quickly?
So let's start with one thing first. I mean, we are a global company. We have competition. We have competitors. But our biggest competitor, or our biggest competition, isn't other companies. It's actually ignorance amongst people, right? They don't understand how important this is. Radon is invisible, odorless, tasteless gas, so you don't know that it's there, actually. So the most important thing is to actually monitor. We do have a webpage called Radon Map, where one can go and see where there are radon in the world. It comes from the soil. It's actually uranium that is actually breaking down, and this radon is all over the place outdoors, but you have so much air, so it's not in high density clusters, so it's fine. But the problem is when it's actually leaking into the house, and then it gets stuck in the house. That's when it becomes a problem, right? And then it builds up, accumulates into levels where actually when you breathe it in, what's happening when this gas is breaking down is that it excites alpha particles. And if it's outside, your skin can actually protect you from it. But in the lungs, you don't have any protection. So it directly impacts the cell DNA, right? When these alpha particles struck. So what means is that when these cells repair themselves, they can actually do it incorrect. And that's when you have cancer growth. Now it became very technical. Sorry for that. But that's kind of the essence of radon. And there are around, I think it's several thousand deaths per year. It's different statistics in different countries, but people are actually dying from this. It is the leading cause of lung cancer amongst non-smokers. So it is huge. But because people don't see it, people don't feel it, it really doesn't tingle their spidey sense, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is to really educate people. And it's not only in homes, right? It is commercial buildings, in schools. Of course, in commercial buildings and schools, you have the ventilation, but when the ventilation stops, you can see the radon really increases. So there is radon, right?
Right.
So it's super important for us to make sure that people have a very low cost, easy way to do the radon monitoring. Because once the radon levels are known, there are very simple solutions for it. There's actually not that costly. So there are solutions for it, but you need to start monitoring to see if you have a problem first, right?
Yeah, it is fascinating. I take it you monitor much more than just the levels of radon, right? And there are probably some other solutions that fix this. Okay, because so tell me some success stories, right? Like I would like to know, someone approached you or you approached someone based on your map, and that transformation for a company that was never monitoring this, never even knew before you educated them that they are in maybe the risky area or they should be monitoring, they could change something. What that transformation brings for a building or company, school, hospital, right? Like a year later, how is that different?
So initially, as with any other tech company, the first customers you have is early adopters, right? Mm-hmm. Tech enthusiasts and all that stuff. You have people who are generally interested in technology, and to them, you don't really have to sell the technology. You don't really have to sell anything because they'll jump on top of any type of new technology. And for those people, we were very successful in the start because they were so tuned into the technology that they became our ambassadors within their companies. And that's how we actually grew the portfolio, because they were our ambassador. They had that sense of trust that you need. And from there, obviously, we built some of these success stories. We tried different segments, everything from selling directly to office tenants, facility management. So we tried a lot of things, but in the end, we realized that the customers who are most successful with our products are the ones that can actually do something about the problem, right? If you have a tenant in an office, they buy our products, they get the results, but the only thing they can do is complain, right? They can complain. So in the end, we actually tuned straight into building owners and facility management, because those are the ones who could actually do something about these problems and thereby actually benefit from having these monitoring solutions. So one thing is to be able to go back to complaining tenants and say that, well, look at this report. This is what we actually measured. There's nothing wrong with the air in here. Mm-hmm. And actually, that actually is usually a good solution, because as long as people see on a paper, okay, the air is good, then there's something else, right? So that's been our angle for a very long time, to allow facility managers to have that time saved, right? Both from running out or driving out to different buildings and measuring and everything. Now they can sit in one spot and monitor their complete building portfolio. And they know where they also need to go and potentially do something or improve something and so forth. So that's been kind of the key success story throughout all these companies, the amount of time that we're actually saving. And if you look, and this is actually quite funny, if you look at the investments that these companies typically have done in the past, the cost is actually much, much, much lower than for the coffee that they purchase for the employees, right? So the investment here is so low. And the fact that you can also use this information, which became very important in commercial buildings, you can use this indoor quality information to actually save energy. So you can actually either tune the ventilation and the energy or the heating, tune it down to save energy, or you can actually connect it straight to the BMS system, as I talked about earlier, where you can introduce demand-based operation, meaning that when there's no people in the building, why should the building actually be operating at maximum capacity?
Mhm.
So you have all these different aspects of it. I have many success stories that we could talk about, but overall, the ability to save time for our customers, that's been the primary focus.
Yeah. Do people in this building have access to that? Like they can they see that air quality, or is it just the owner of a building?
So that depends. I mean, we have different products. We have products that actually have screens on them.
Mhm.
So users can actually see. Some building owners and some players in commercial real estate really want to show and brag about, look at our data. But in most cases, and actually in schools as well, what is typical to do is to blank those screens, and that information is internal until, because one of the prime reasons to invest in this solution and also to invest in, because we are a SaaS company, right? Invest in that long-term journey is to be able to make improvements along the way. So one of these things is that we are helping the customers to indicate where they need to do the improvements. Do they need to replace the HVAC unit over there? Do they need to rethink the way they have designed this office, as an example?
Yeah, I can see this, and obviously, yes, like we all monitoring something, whoops and Aura rings and this, and our phones constantly monitoring. So people do want to see the stats and they check. But if they're not educated, walking in a hospital, you see something in orange, 7.4, and it looks orange, you're going to be alerted, right? Because you don't know what it means. It only makes sense when people actually have a little bit of understanding what these are, what they were before that was installed as well, right? Because that's going to show them, it is orange now. If you turn it off, it's red. So I completely...
That also, but you actually pinpoint one thing there, and that's the fact that we have for a long time, as we have been working with facility managers, we have been presenting numbers known to facility managers, like particle amounts per volume, VOCs, parts per billion, technical terminology, right?
Yeah.
It helps the facility managers that understands these concepts. But if you're talking to building owners, or if you move up the ladder in the organization, the conversation goes different, right? And so that's also where we're tuning our language now to not talk about specific VOCs or specific levels, but talking about how is the building performing compared to other parts of the portfolio, right, of buildings. So that's one of the key takeaways, to really try to explain to users what is actually happening in the buildings and how is it performing.
And it's just slightly off, but a lot of companies, I speak to a lot of companies, and a lot of companies now look at the extra things when they employ people. There is a gym, right? There is a bar, there is a Friday drinks, and it's all in the house, and a play area, and a napping area, right? And there is maybe a counselor literally on the team, and well-being officer, right? So the companies are really looking into how do we maximize our team, and you fit into this, right? In another huge sector, right? Breathing, like, to think that you're going to be doing this. You may be using the gym or not, right? You may be going to the cafe or not. You're going to be breathing that air. So it is a massive win for them, as long as they probably need to be educated in the first place. Little bit.
Yeah,
right?
and also getting back to work, right? We still have that phase from after the pandemic of getting people back to the office, right? People still want to work from home because they've built their own offices and all that stuff. And so that's one of the key aspects as well, is to allow the people to come back to an office where it's a healthy environment. There's this feeling when you go into a room that is well ventilated. Maybe I'm biased because I work with it, but there is some sense of cleanliness. And then I'm not talking about the way cleaning products smell, but the way there's no smell, right? That's how clean actually smells. And it's also funny that, when you sit in these meeting rooms and you start feeling tired, maybe you think that you need a coffee and so forth. That's actually what you don't need. What you need is fresh air. There are studies that show that if you reach, I think it's between 1,500, 2,000 ppms of CO2, that's very easily, you probably have that in the room that you're seeing right now, by the way. The cognitive impact that is happening in your brain is equivalent of having 1 pint of beer. Wow. So it's like, it's no wonder that when you're starting to feeling a bit fuzzy in a meeting room that is stuffed with the air, that your cognitive ability is actually impacted. So, and that's why at Airthings, we try to make decisions the first thing in the meeting, not at the end of the meeting, when people are actually more alert.
Yeah, this is a fascinating subject that we could probably talk for hours. I'm going to move away from. I'm just going to touch, but yeah, it is fascinating, right? It is a main fuel for our brain. Like you need this, but yeah, it's so many times we don't even think about it, right? We just think we're breathing. Many people don't even take 5 conscious breaths, deep ones, right? We just breathe as we breathe, and that could be a huge playing card for a lot of officers, even for retaining someone as an employee, employing someone. That could be the difference between this swanky office and the next swanky office, right? Super, super cool. And I take it a lot of people to see in the offices, they take it home. They take your device back home and take it. So, you know what? I want this when I'm asleep and me and my family, right? How much is that? Yeah. Oh, super cool. Now, let's go back and focus on our main subject a little bit about how do you find those companies? What's been working for you in terms of execution, right? Are you recommended from offices nearby and building owners? Is it something that you go to some specific trade shows, or do you outreach through any digital channels? What's been working for you to start that education piece for your prospects?
So we have been experimenting with a lot of things, right? So obviously we do attend some of the bigger trade shows, facility management shows, prop tech shows or prop tech events. Is very big to really meet some of these leaning forward type of people that do want to experiment with new technology and so forth. Because what we have to do today, one of the things that we see is we have both B2C and B2B, right? In B2C, you don't really have to sell the product. What you have to do is to have great marketing. You have to have a great brand, right? And we have a great brand for consumer products. So we have been piggybacking a bit on that, right? So we are already a known brand, and that's something that we can reuse in our B2B segment. But again, to sell products, we need to have salespeople. So that's what we have. We have a great sales force that is actually out there, both, of course, at events, but also picking up, calling customers, using LinkedIn Growth Navigator. I don't think that's super successful. At least that platform right now is starting to get challenged with all the AI content. So I think it's in a constant evolution where we've tried everything from SMS to emails to we're trying a lot of things, and we still haven't found that best approach because the market is also evolving, right? So and that's something that I've noticed that comes both if you discuss the products, but also the sales cycle and all that. What you don't have to do is to build a robust portfolio, robust sales pipeline and all that stuff. What you need to do is actually build something that is dynamic, that can change with the market, with the new trends, with everything. And obviously, we also tried some silly things like really trying to target using memes and things like that. But obviously, that's not our buyers. Our buyers are typically talking both from B2C and B2B. It's typically higher ups, right? With some years on their backs, where memes and funny things might not strike good just yet. But we do have seen that keeping a strict professional corporate language has not been successful either, right? So there is something there in between where you need to be educational and also a bit entertaining to have that angle to really get into those right contexts. And in the end, you end up at a customer. Then the biggest challenge that we're posed is you have the person who's going to use the product, you have the person who's going to benefit from the product, and you have the person who's going to pay for the product. Those people are typically not the same person, right?
Yeah.
So again, who is the one that is forward leaning in terms of using new technology and using new ways of doing things? That's the angle. That's how you get in. And as in any B2B, it's all about relationships. It all is all about building trust and relationship and being face to face with people. Which has been a challenge from the pandemic, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, even now, I'm thinking about like few strategies and how you could do this, but it is fascinating. So you've tried some outbound, right? Like email marketing, LinkedIn. I think you very correct in assumption that you just need to be ready to adapt, constant adaptation of something, because things that worked 2 years ago, last year, even right pre-COVID, right? That's just in digital marketing. That's like a century ago, right? Now the business can be done on Google Meet and unheard of, right? And 5 years ago, because you had to meet someone in person. Now a Zoom meeting is just a natural thing. And in your case, it's quite fascinating that when I think about it, because you can outreach to a person that's most likely not going to be the building owner, right? But they have the access to build. They can put that pressure. They probably pay that building owner a substantial amount of money. And they will have, you need to find those adapters, early adapters, people that really are conscious about that stuff, right? So that's exactly what I thought would happen, that you actually have like 3 stakeholders, right? You need to interest someone that's going to introduce you to someone that's got actually power to install a device within this building, right? And there will be someone else that's probably paying for this, right? But yeah, fascinating. So how, with this adaptation, how are you think you're going to adapt? What's going to be the next couple of moves for the next year or two? Is it any particular digital channels you want to do, or organic, or changes in your approach?
So now we've actually experimented so much throughout the time. I could probably write a book about it, and I might actually do it one day. But we've been experimenting so much that we now finally, after like 6 years, has actually tuned into what our actual target customer is, right? Honestly, back in the day, I come from Texas Instruments, a global corporation where we work with these warboards, and these are the logos that we're going to find. Obviously, it is a play here in terms of reaching out to the right people. Mm-hmm. That's really what we need to do. We need to get face to face with the right people. And that can be done in different ways. But first and foremost, we do have big events that allow those face-to-face to happen. I've started to question the ability to reach people via email, via digital formats. Hopefully that can change soon. But then you have this whole aspect of how is people actually finding your brand? How is people finding your products? In the past, people might have been Googling. Obviously, right now, they go to ChatGPT and they ask ChatGPT, please rank the best indoor air quality monitors. And then you can ask the question, but how does the GPT know? Did somebody buy ad space? Is it using SEO? I mean, you can go to LinkedIn and you can see a lot of conversations about this, but nobody actually seems to know. How are these AI agents that's going to help people all around the world to find products, to find services? How can they be used to be beneficial to your products, right? And that's also part of being dynamic. So what we have today is that we have several 100,000 products out there with customers that are paying subscriptions. They are super happy with the products. They have success stories from reducing absenteeism, improving productivity, saving tons of energy, hitting sustainability goals. So I think that's what we really need to do to make sure that we can put all those success stories out there. Some of these companies don't want to talk about it, obviously. Some of these are huge corporations that might have books of legal compliance to get through to even talk about them. Mm-hmm. But most of these are actually quite happy to talk about, some of these success stories. Yeah. So to answer your question, to be honest, I don't know, but I do have some indicators on what we can try, right?
Yeah. Yeah, super cool. Obviously, because we always say use the case studies, but are you going to the building owner who is probably not even there, right, very often? Or do you go to the office that uses the office space there? You go to business and you ask them for case study. Hey, you were benefiting from one of our products. Can you talk us and discuss, even if you're not actually paying for it directly? Indirectly, they do, right? But they directly don't. So it is many avenues for you to really try to find who is the person. Because my first idea would be to go to the offices, find someone that, because number one, find someone that really cares about it, right? Saying, hey, they know your air quality, and people that care about it will know, right? They will have some understanding, and use them as, someone that will introduce you to the right people.
But that's also the beauty of having a subscription service, because it forces you to engage with these clients, right?
Yeah.
You're forced to, because at some point they will do a renewal. Now we have subscriptions per device. You can imagine a customer having 1,000 devices deployed across the portfolio. Obviously, they will do a very thorough review at the renewal. Do we need this solution? And throughout that exploration, there is typically 1 or 2 or 3 very successful case studies internally that they often also share with us. And we say, hey, you want to do something about this? You want to do something? Let's tell the world about this.
Yeah.
And most of the cases they don't, but some cases they actually do. So that's some of those great stories that we do, that we can tell.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. We're having a quite long conversation. I'm going to start wrapping up, because we can probably talk for hours about all this. But tell me, where could people find you? Right? Obviously, if someone is interested in taking a look, how they can do the first step to monitor their air quality within this space, home or office, right? Where can they find you? Where can educate themselves a little bit more about this?
So the best way is to go into our webpage, airthings.com, and there you can navigate to whatever use case, wherever knowledge that you're seeking.
Awesome. Thank you very much for this. We'll leave the link. I advise everyone to just go check Airthings out and see, if there is something you can do about the air quality in your building. Joakim, thank you very much for joining me today, for sharing everything about yourself and the company and the journey and how concerned you are about your air and actually trying to change that for businesses and people and schools around the world. Thank you very much. I'm super grateful that you've joined me today.
Thank you, Pete. This was awesome.